John Krasinski's post-apocalyptic horror has been a sensation since the premiere of Part 1, A Quiet Place, 2018, but there's one undeniable truth about the first movie. A Quiet Place and A Quiet Place Part 2 center around the Abbott family, who are navigating survival in a city overrun by swarms of extraterrestrial predators that hunt by sound. There are disastrous consequences for the Abbott family's youngest, Bo, Cade Woodward, who is killed when his toy spaceship activates and erupts in a cascade of sounds. These A Quiet Place events are set years ahead of the prequel story that was released in 2024, A Quiet Place, Day 1. Communicating mostly through American Sign Language, the Abbott family's dynamic is remarkable and adds a layer of depth to the horror that's often central to driving the plot forward. More detailed explorations of the Death Angels are offered throughout each movie, which unearths the creature's weaknesses in A Quiet Place. Although it's been 6 years since A Quiet Place, there's one truth about the young son's death that needs acknowledging. John Krasinski and Emily Blunt's A Quiet Place characters were responsible for Bo's death. The parents did not do enough to protect their youngest child. Bo fatally playing with his spaceship in A Quiet Place. Paramount Pictures. Bo was only 4 years old during the events of A Quiet Place. It's safe to say that at this age, parents are, above all else, cautious of their child's whereabouts. Particularly in scenarios that pose threats to their child's safety. On account of this, Lee, John Krasinski, and Evelyn Abbott, Emily Blunt, should not have allowed Bo to walk behind them as they are journeying through the city. As children are unpredictable, it's not unwise to say that it's immensely naive of Lee and Evelyn to assume a 4-year-old child would understand the gravity of the situation. In an earlier scene, Bo had attempted to get batteries for his toy in an abandoned pharmacy before he was stopped by Lee, who cautioned him against it because it would be too loud. This raises the question of how both parents, namely Lee, didn't notice the toy or even check Bo's bag at any point during their journey. Instead, the parents shamefully pin the blame on Reagan, Millicent Simmons, who unknowingly gives the toy to Bo before leaving the store. This is incredibly unfair, as the girl goes on to bear the guilt throughout the rest of the movie. Bo should have also known better in A Quiet Place. The family had been living in silence for over a year. Although Bo was young, the whole world had fallen silent for well over a year during the events of A Quiet Place. It's reasonable to assume that Bo would have understood the rules by this point, and he shouldn't have taken the toy from his big sister, especially after his father had very seriously warned him against it, telling him no. Despite this, the argument could be made that Bo simply trusted his big sister. Reagan continuously took care of him and often provided protection, so Bo likely viewed her as an authoritative figure, much like his parents. That being said, if Lee and Evelyn had any inclination or doubt that Bo did not fully understand the severity of the situation, he should have been watched more closely. It's the responsibility of the parents to make sure they provide constant reminders to their son that he shouldn't touch anything. It's important to recognize that Bo still had his childlike sense of wonder, and it's this innocence that makes him oblivious to any consequences. Unquestionably, alarm bells should have rung in Lee's head the very moment the young boy claimed that he wanted batteries for his spaceship. Why Bo's death in A Quiet Place was necessary. Bo's death emphasized the Death Angels' real threat. Reagan's cochlear implant in A Quiet Place. Paramount Pictures. The fatal bridge scene is criminally underrated in the entire A Quiet Place franchise. It was a huge moment for the Abbott family that pushed the plot forward and added a sense of guilt and grief. For the most part, this is emphasized by the scene's staging. John Krasinski made the creative decision to show Bo's death through Reagan's point of view, where everything falls silent because she's deaf. Only the lights of the spaceship illuminate in the background, and she sees the fear in her parents' eyes before turning to see the toy rocket she gave to him. This sets the precedent for Reagan's guilt throughout the rest of the movie. Not to mention, this scene is ingenious for setting up the real threat these monsters pose, and why silence is so important for survival. Consequently, it raises the stakes for future scenes in the movie. For instance, when Evelyn goes into labor towards the end of A Quiet Place, the apprehension of her attempting to go undetected is almost painfully tense. More so, as Evelyn steps onto a broken nail on the staircase, which is potentially one of the most memorable moments in A Quiet Place.